Hello, everybody. I'm over here glazing around, okay? It's funny. You know what's funny? That basically the whole music industry is getting placed with AI, which I'm not exactly on pro AI, but I'm not anti AI either. I mean, it's weird to be pro AI, like that's a weird thing, sure. But it's even weirder to be anti AI, you know? Because, again, it's weird to be pro AI because it's like, for some reason, they really need to consume water and stuff like that. And, well, they do because that's how the technology works. But, like, because of it using that way, it makes it a lot harder to, like, have water and use water because of it. So they really need to have something where it's like machines can have like a shit ton of supply of it without having to like ruin the earth, that kind of thing. Because at least then they'll be using some sort of system or some sort of thing where they don't have to constantly suck up all the stuff, where they can just use a tiny little bit of energy from whatever and it will last for like centuries, just off of that little tiny bit of, or even thousands of years, just off of that little tiny bit of energy, that kind of thing. And it's crazy, man. Like, I don't know, dog. Like, you need to understand something. You need to understand this. That I am someone who exists in the real world. Okay? I have been tried, like, people have tried to cancel me. Like, my niggers know that I am out here doing stuff. Okay? Been doing it since, like, I spawned into this world. Like, that's how long I've been doing it for. And today I'm not going to really be outside because the weather's a bit shit, so there's that as well. And, there are many other things going on in the world right now, depending on when you're watching this video. It could be about what's going on in the news. It could be your birthday. I don't know. I don't know, man. Something seems strange. Something seems odd. Something seems off. But it's not the end of the world, Well, not the end of my world, anyway. Not the end of the universe. Earth is the homeland. The homeland planet for humans. Okay? They don't like to admit this, but we're basically the original, homeland for humans, okay? We're the OG homeland, as they tend to say in my era. My generation. Well, not really my generation, but, like, still, it's associated with my generation. Because for some reason, millennials specifically cannot separate, or have a hard time separating, and sometimes Generation X, but mostly millennials have a hard time separating between Generation Z and Generation Alpha. Like, that's still a thing. The whole generation stuff. It's literally a social construct. And you might go, oh, but people say that all the time. Dog, what I mean by that is it was invented around the 1890s as a way to, like, get rich people to cope. But, like, that didn't become, like, a whole, marketed thing until World War I, because they needed to describe the people before it and during that war. And then it never really caught on until the roaring 20s, you know? And the reason why they tend to call it that, or sometimes they call it the optimistic era or the optimistic age, is because that age where people were like super duper duper, and I really mean optimistic. They were the most optimistic you could ever have. They were opening borders, creating a whole bunch of problems after that war because they thought, oh, the war ended, so nothing bad is going to really happen after this. It was the war to end all wars, you know, the war to end all wars. And then, guess what? World War II happened. Okay? A bunch of heat started to get to shit. A bunch of battles started to interconnect. And then bada bing, bada boom. You know? You had yourself a world war. You know? And after that, it just got really, really bad. And then for the next 6 years, they were going to be, the world was constantly at war. And people try to say, oh, but World War I was a European war. Here's the thing. Not exactly, okay? Like, it's European in the sense that that's where it mostly happened. That's where the war mostly happened. But I think the reason why people tend to say it's a European war is because they're the powers of the world and they were beefing at the time. But you got to understand that World War I is responsible for World War II. It's directly responsible, okay? That time in between those two wars, like, you know, what led up to that war caused that war. And after that war, that era in between, because of that era and, you know, Adolf Hitler, people just got really big on the war stuff, and then it got, you know, less and less, you know, harder to tell. And they were completely unprepared for it. Soon as it happened, that became the bigger one because people were just assuming that it was never going to happen, you know? That kind of thing. And so that World War happened, and then, you know, people are surprised that the U.S. wasn't like one of the dominant world powers at the end of the war. Yes, they did do nuclear stuff or whatever, but like, USA has never gone through a golden age, you know? People don't like to admit this, but they never have, you know? Like, almost every nation has gone through a golden era, okay? There are a few exceptions, like, say, the USSR at its height. You know, it never had a true golden age because it was never around for that long. Whereas the US is, you know, old enough to be around for that long. That kind of thing. And all they had left after the war was the Soviets. So that's where the whole Cold War came from. And then after the Cold War and the post-Cold War era, you also had 9/11. And then you kept going with this glaze. You kept going. Then you had them 20-year war. Then you had Charlie Kirk death. Well, he had Michael Jackson death before it. But you had, you know, Charlie Kirk death. Then, recently, you had some stuff going on with, you had a couple months ago with Maduro, Mayo guy over there, and then you had the guy from Iran, that stuff going on, and then you have whatever the fuck goes on in your time, okay? You had all the lore before that, 2 world wars, okay, that led up to it, and then you have now, alright? You have time of recording, and then you have whatever's going on in your right now. Not immediate right now, because that's constantly changing. But I mean, like, in the year you're watching this in. You know? Whatever year you're particularly watching this in. But anyways, I, and many other people, have finished with this video. So I am out of here. Bye!